right, safe harbor slide. We have approximate knowledge of many things. We don't know everything. We did this with, the brains we have, the best effort, and the resources out there. This is mostly just for fun because I love this GIF.
Cool. So why are we here? As we've talked to various security teams over the years, we've noticed a really common theme amongst all of them, and that's a reliance on detection-powered prevention rather than proactive prevention. And what I mean when I say that is trying to detect something bad that's starting to happen and then stop it before it actually really turns into a thing you have to deal with. And that's a great layer to have in your stack, but if that's all you have, you're starting out behind the curve. You're hoping that you, with your own detection logic, or more frequently, a paid third party who doesn't give you really any insight into how they detect and what they detect. Whereas with a detection or a proactive approach to prevention, you can just nip all those things in the bud and not have to worry about alerts and trying to be as fast as you possibly can. So in this talk, what we'll do is we'll explore some Windows hacks, quote unquote, to help prevent those bad things from even starting on your users' workstations, and hopefully do so in a way that is friendly to your users and ideally totally invisible to them. In each step of the way, we'll follow the same common methodology. First, we'll look to understand what is the threat itself that we're trying to protect against. We'll look for some common breakpoints in its workflow. What are the steps that it follows to get to that point of execution? And then we'll brainstorm controls. Well, what could we do to maybe take advantage of those breakpoints? We'll talk feasibility for actually implementing them, and then the deployment itself.
So, sorry, as Mike mentioned, what was that? Oh, let me move my mic. Is that better? Check, check, check. Okay. So, as Mike said earlier, we want to implement controls that aren't going to make our users have a horrible day, because security is a partnership. Our roles as security professionals is partially to secure our business, make sure that bad guys aren't getting in. But we also have to do that in a way that enables the business to continue to function, because if the business doesn't function, we no longer have a job as a security professional at that business. So, we have to focus on those security objectives and the business objectives and kind of meet in the middle there. And with that, so we can find ways to raise the bar on security. Oftentimes, I see people who want to reach that level of perfection. They want to make sure that we have a totally locked up system. Well, sometimes that makes the system unusable, and we really just need to raise that bar so we are more difficult to attack than the next place. And as mentioned, we can't break the business with these controls because that needs to function. The next piece of this is what I like to call avoid the ugh. And this is your control going to make someone go, ugh, security, when they are at their desk? Not quite in the same way that MFA did when we all went through that, but if they're just trying to use their system in a normal way, are they going to have challenges doing that? And the way to really do those things effectively is knowing the organization we work for, knowing the business, knowing what's important, knowing what people are doing normally by establishing baselines. What should your systems do? What shouldn't they do? Knowing what systems you have, what's on them. Mike's going to stop me because I'm going to start soapboxing about asset inventory.
No, please don't. All right. So we'll start off with a really, really common problem that we see, and that's malicious advertising. So let's understand the threat. Put ourselves in the shoes of an employee, of a user. I'm really good at my job. I'm trying to get more effective, right? I'm looking for a tool that makes me more efficient, speeds me up, lets me do more things. So I'm on Google. I'm searching for this tool, and an ad pops up. Maybe that ad is in the Google results itself. Maybe it's on one of the pages that you clicked through to. Maybe it's on a YouTube video all the time. Whatever it is, that ad promises to be exactly the tool that I'm looking for. Great. So I click on it, and I see a little download button, exactly what I'm expecting to see. So I click download. I open the file, and What happens from there can vary. Maybe I see a little error message, I forget about it, I go on through my day. Maybe I see the tool itself, what looks like it doesn't work, it does work. It doesn't really matter because in the background what's really happening is malicious code is running. Every adversary in the world seems to use it, anything from Atomic Stealer, Chrome Loader, and at the end of the day, you have a bad day and your user still doesn't have the tool they need. So what are some breakpoints in this process? Starting from the point of execution and working backward, we could maybe prevent the user from opening malicious files. Maybe that's something we could look at. Maybe we could do something, prevent the user from downloading the file, prevent it from being written to the disk. Maybe we could prevent the user from reaching that malicious page. Or maybe we could just prevent the user from looking for a tool altogether. If we could just prevent users from opening malicious files on their workstations, then a lot of us probably wouldn't even be here. And I'd have a really great business, but that's not super feasible. Maybe we could stop the download. I mean, technically there are, depending on your browser, some settings you could use to stop downloads, filter them, but that's not really that realistic either. It's probably going to create a lot of IT headache and a lot of ugh. So what else do we have? Skipping over the one with the check mark, maybe we could prevent the user from looking for a tool. I mean, ideally you're enabling your employees with the things they need to do their job and they don't go out searching for new tools, but the way the landscape shifts so frequently, that's not really realistic either. It's a big job, and it's not something that you can just do on their workstation. So that leaves us with preventing the user from visiting the page. Well, how could we do that? There are lots of options. There's user education, right? Mandatory security training works all the time. It's perfect. When we rely on humans to recognize bad things that they frankly do not care about, then we see no problems. Not really. That's never actually a good option. So what else could we do? DNS filtering. Great part of your security stack. It's definitely something you should look into. DNS is finicky. It's tricky. I don't like it. It always causes problems. And when you have DNS filtering in place, maybe some of the ads that the user is going to see actually show up and just doesn't allow them to click through. So now they're seeing error messages, another UG factor. So what else could we do? What about ad blocking? Most of your users are probably already familiar with ad blocking. Everybody hates ads. They don't want to see them. So they might already have an extension on their personal browsers. Why not take advantage of that and force it out to all of your users? Hopefully, you're managing your employees' browsers so that you can actually control the settings, limit the extensions that they can use, etc. If you're not, that's your starting point, not this. But once you have a managed browser in place, pick an ad blocking extension. uBlock Origin, unless you're using Chrome and they killed that, so Origin Lite, something else. Force it to your users and then watch all the ads just disappear and no more clicks. You can do that through group policy too, depending on your network stack. Maybe your firewalls have an option. There are lots of routes to explore, but at the end of the day, making the ads go away is going to reduce a lot of your attack surface. Now I'll be up front. I kind of cheated here. None of this is a Windows hack, but it's such an important control that we try to get customers to implement, and they really never actually do, that I figured I'm going to take advantage of this talk to sit on my soapbox and actually say something, and now I'll get down and we'll talk about Windows hacks. First, ISOs. What even is an ISO? If you're not familiar with them, they're basically a CD as a file, right? They're a virtualized optical disk. And just like a zip archive, you can open them, and they have more files inside of them. And they were all the rage a few years ago. Everybody from adware to nation-state adversaries were using these to deliver malware to systems. Nowadays, we really only see it used by red teams, other kinds of testing, but if there's one thing I know about this industry, it's that the old always becomes new again. So just because it's only red teams doing it now doesn't mean it's not worth exploring. So what does the process look like? The user gets an ISO, they download it, they open it, they see files inside, they execute it. We already talked about downloading files, what we can maybe do about that. We already talked about user education not being a realistic control here. So what else could we do? What happens when a user opens an ISO file? Technically, it appears like that. It gets mounted to the disk as if it's a CD, and then the user opens it and looks inside. So what could we do with that? If we look at the registry, one of my favorite places in Windows, there are all kinds of possibilities, most of them poorly documented, so you got to do some exploring. But you can look at HKey class's root, which is a really useful spot for finding configuration information for different files. There's other stuff there too, but that's what I care about right now. Important note, it is dynamically generated by combining two different hives. So if you're making edits, maybe not the best place to do that, but if you want to get a single view for what's actually configured on the system, great spot to do it. So if we look for Windows ISO file, we'll see a shell subkey and then two more keys underneath that, burn and mount. These are technically the verbs that are available for that file type. And the default one we see configured under shell is mount. So what that means is the default action that's going to take place when a user interacts with the file is it's going to mount it to the disk. Well, maybe we could change the default verb. Maybe we could make it burn instead, so that instead of mounting, it brings up a weird menu that the user isn't expecting, and they go about their day. Maybe we delete it. If we just delete the value altogether, it's going to default alphabetical order in those verbs. So burn is still going to show up, so we could do that too. But that kind of introduces a little bit of an UG factor. A user's getting an unknown window popping up. I'm not familiar with this, especially if they're younger. They may not know what burning a CD means. So more UG, right? What else can we do? It turns out those verbs in the registry you can customize. So if you add a new value called programmatic access only, that's the name, it has no data. If you add that to a verb, it doesn't show up anymore. You right click on the file in the context menu, it's not there. If you double click on it, even if it's set as the default verb, it's not going to run. Instead, Windows will do the thing again of going to the next alphabetical option and doing that instead. If you put that value on all of the verbs instead, the user's going to get a window that they might be more familiar with, which is the what app do you want to open this file with, and they're not going to see mount as an option in there, right, because that's not actually a binary. And so they'll just ignore that, hopefully go along with their day, maybe an IT ticket, but no malicious code being presented to the user, and you avoided another attack.
Speaking of files, am I on? Can y'all hear me? It feels like it's not. Okay, sorry. Panic. Speaking of files, we have other files. So many files that are inside the computer. And maybe even inside the ISO file we might see files, but typically we're going to see them in zips. On Windows, you have a very helpful system. When you double click on a binary, your binary runs because Windows knows how to execute that. If you have script files like a .js, a .vba, cmd, what have you, you double click on that, and Windows is so nice that it's going to execute that script file for you. It's lovely. Great way to get C2 if you know that's what you want. And as Mike was just talking about, when you double click on an unknown file, you get presented with that context menu of how would you like to open this? So we're going to dig into that a little bit. But how do we stop the user from double clicking on that JS file or that whatever to then prevent the code execution? I sat down and I brainstormed on this, and I said, you know, we could do user education. This comes up in every single thing that we think about. We're like, could we teach our users to not do this thing? Maybe, but probably not. So maybe we could use the registry to alter how these files are being opened. And then we thought, well, files are associated to an app, as we see. So could we use that to our advantage somehow? Well, it turns out we can with the file type, looking at the association and the file type. So when we have a .js file, when we have a .vba, that is then associated to a specific file type in the system. So .js equals JavaScript file. And then that file type is then associated to a file type that it opens with a specific type of command. So you're going to open with a W script or a PowerShell. And this is where we can implement a potential break for this attack. So we can dig into those associations and those file types. We're still undecided on how to pronounce the ASSOC, so we're taking opinions on that one. But if we look at the association to a .js file, we can say .js equals JS file. And then we look at that file type with F type and we see it's going to launch with W script and that command line. This is where we could potentially break things. We could change the .js to equal something different entirely, so then Windows wouldn't know what to do with the .js file. Or we could take the JS file equals and change the command that it opens with to something more benign. Or could we combine these into something greater? Yes, we can. So the neat thing we can do here is take that association of a .js and make it equal to some arbitrary string, make it something fun. We chose sand because I don't know why. Computers are thinking sand? Is that what's up?
Sandbox.
Sandbox. Oh, okay. Well, that makes more sense. But we make it equal sand. And then we can take that file, or take that association to sand and change it so anything that's associated to sand would open with Notepad. So your user double clicks on a JS file, and then the JS file opens in Notepad, and then they can go learn to code and write their own JavaScript, right? Or they're very confused about why they have all this code on their screen, and they're probably going to close it and go on with their day. Now, to make this easier and not having to do this one by one, we can actually do this through a group policy. Here on the screen, you have an example here in group policy where we have all of those file types that we commonly see being leveraged by threat actors in the attacks to execute code. And very simply, by making this change, you've changed the game for initial access for your organization. You no longer have to worry about those methods being effective against you. And you've raised that bar in a very simple, yet elegant way that's probably not going to impact your users too horribly.
Sure, go ahead.
How would that affect the browser trying to run JavaScript?
So the question is a good one. How would it affect a browser trying to run a JavaScript file? Answer is it's not. This is purely going to affect the Explorer experience, so the interactive experience between the user and the file. It also wouldn't change like command line experience. If you have a developer or IT person who runs scripts, it's not going to change what they experience in the terminal in PowerShell. It's just that double click.
Good question.
Question is startup scripts, logon scripts. No, it shouldn't, but I'll be upfront, I haven't tested that, so. Approximate knowledge. So we talked about initial user action, right? What happens if all those things that we just explored fail, right? We should be thinking in layers. So an adversary bypassed those steps, and now we have something running on the system. Lots of times we see staged payloads being used, not stageless. So what that means is this code that's running on the system, it's going to reach out to the network, it's going to download the next malicious code, it'll run that. That might happen 3, 4 more times. And generally, if we're seeing this kind of initial access stuff happening, it's using a LOLbin to do that network connection. And if you look at the LOLbins project, you'll see something like 54, I think, different Windows binaries that all can be used to download. So they have a lot of options. And it might look something like this, right, where you see W script reaching out to a domain and downloading something and executing it. So what could we do there? At this point, we're past user interaction, right? The user interacted and we have things running. So we have to take a little bit different approach and think, well, do those binaries really need network access? Some of them might, but have you asked that question? Windows has a really great, capable firewall built into every system that a lot of times gets underutilized. And one of the capabilities it has is you can set custom rules for any binary and decide whether or not you want to block outbound traffic. So maybe we think, take this list from LOLbins, and for each binary, look at our EDR, look at our SIM, and say, hey, are any of these binaries making outbound connections within our environment? If they are, we maybe should ask also, well, is that legitimate? But we can set those binaries aside because we don't want to break anything. But if we go back 90 days or so and see, we have a list of, like, Mishta is how I'm going to pronounce it, that aren't making these outbound connections, why not just not allow them to do it? So we can implement controls pretty easily with Windows Firewall. It's not so much a hack, it's how it's supposed to be used. So whether it's through PowerShell commands, through group policy, take that list from LOLbins, check your environment, what's actually communicating with the internet, and push those rules out. Maybe you have teams too, you can customize by groups. Your developers may need more network access than your finance team, but push out rules, don't allow that second stage to be downloaded in the first place. And now maybe you have an alert, maybe you have to go clean a system, but you're cleaning a first stage loader that didn't really do much on the endpoint, rather than re-imaging somebody's computer and making them go ugh.
All right, now it's time to verify everybody's humanity. I'm gonna need you all to press the Windows key and the R key, then press Control V and enter so I can have a shell on your computer. If this is ClickFix, it's been fairly new, not brand new, but we've seen it for a bit now, and we've seen variations on this. It's a social engineering attack where we are seeing users trying to access a website, an application, a file, and they are prompted to prove they're a human, which is very much a part of normal, I don't know if you can see, normal processes that we've become accustomed to with CAPTCHAs and whatnot. So it's no longer a thought of like, oh, I might be getting hacked here, I should watch out for this. They're like, this is part of my normal day. So there's no second thought here. So what's happening is they're gonna press Windows R, they're gonna press Windows X, Windows S to bring up a menu to then input their code in some way, shape, or form. And we need to figure out a way to break this. And there's no bad ideas, as Linda would say, which I appreciate her for. But I think there may be some bad ideas in my list here, because we've talked about this. Preventing social engineering opportunity, hard. If we could do that, we'd all have a very easy job. Changing user behavior? Not great. We could maintain proactive URL and IP block lists. I'm sure that's very effective and works well, playing whack-a-mole. No one here has probably tried that one before. We could block users from running PowerShell. That could work depending upon the environment and what you have set up. Some places have found that to be an effective control. Other places find that that breaks everything and it's just not worth it. But we have this option of potentially disabling those hotkeys. So we dug into this more and we thought, okay, do we have to just disable all the hotkeys? Is that the option we're stuck with? Or can we get targeted and hit the hotkeys that the users are getting prompted to enter? And through sifting through sysadmin blogs and the registry and a lot of trial and error, we found a registry that allows this to happen. So you can disable all hotkeys. That is an option. probably not the best option because who here is pressing Windows R pretty regularly in their work? Okay, a few of you. We might upset a couple people if we break that.
What about Windows L to lock your workstation?
You lock your workstation when you leave?
Not if you take away Win+L.
So, probably not the best solution, but it could work. And you can do that through HKey, local machine, or current user, and jump into Control Version Policies Explorer. And under that no win keys, you can set that to 0. And that's going to disable all Windows hotkey variations. So, an option. But we did find that you can get really specific with a similar path in under current user Explorer Advanced. You can disable specific hotkeys by entering the letter value in the data field. It took us a few tries to get this right. One of the silly mistakes I made was like, oh, I'm going to put commas between those letters. I'm sure registry will be thrilled with commas. It was not. It didn't work. I was sad, and then I took away the commas, and everything worked as it should. So we threw in R, X, and S, and pressed the buttons. No run dialog, no Win+X menu, no search menu, and then I took away Mike's control or Windows L, and then he told me not to do that. But there's more variations to this attack, and I think Mike has some more to say about this Win+X variant.
That's right. So Win+X, just taking away the hotkey isn't necessarily going to be good enough on its own, right? The ClickFix style lures that we've seen just change all the time, right? And if Win+X stops being available, though, there's no reason they couldn't say right-click on the start menu and then select PowerShell from the list, right? So, or perhaps, you have your IT folks, your dev folks who really like their Win+X key. They don't want to get rid of it. So you exclude that from your policy. But you don't necessarily need to accept the risk now that there's these options in this menu that maybe they're going to use for initial access. We asked ourselves, the start menu, the items in there you may be familiar with, it's populated by a location within the Windows folder structure that has all these shortcuts, right? And that's what actually causes things to appear in the start menu. How do things show up in the Win+X menu? Could it be the same? And the answer is actually yes, almost the exact same spot in the folder structure is this Win+X folder. And if you open that, you'll see these 3 groups, which happen to correspond with the groups on the Win+X menu itself. And inside there, you might be able to read on the PowerShell output here, lots of shortcuts. Each shortcut corresponds with a setting within the Win+X menu. If you delete things from that list and then reboot Explorer process, it'll refresh, and those things won't show up anymore. So not only can you customize, make new things available in this menu for your users, you can take away things that maybe they don't need, like the run option, Windows PowerShell admin, or PowerShell. Take those away, and now you have a nice, safe Win+X menu that isn't going to be vulnerable to these kinds of lures. Implementation, fairly straightforward. It's not a registry setting, right? So you would have to go through a startup script or a logon script. If you do the logon script, you will have to reboot the Explorer process. So maybe the startup script is better. While you're at it, you may as well hit the default folder as well, so that any new users get wrapped up into this script and don't have those items populated in their Win+X menu. But just write a simple PowerShell script, go through those folders, delete the ones you want, or go nuclear and delete everything, and now you have a safer Win+X menu.
And you can even add fun new options.
That's right. A point of note, though, this is why it's important to test before implementing anything, especially anything we put on slides. This is where we started. Before any of the other ClickFix things, we saw this no run item in the GPO. It's in the registry too, obviously, and we thought that sounds promising, right? Because the problem we're looking at right now is the run dialog, and most users aren't using that. So if we could just do no run, then Cool, that takes care of everything.
Easy.
It takes care of more than everything, though. If you look at the group policy menu, there's like this big, long warning that, hey, this is going to break this and that and all these things, and it's not even actually complete. It talks about breaking UNC Path Navigation and Internet Explorer. It's all Explorer processes, so your normal Explorer process, a user tries to navigate to a shared folder, it's not working if you implement this. So it seems promising. Don't do that one unless, like, I don't know, you have a kiosk or something. Maybe then it's safe.
So with all of this, there's more problems to solve. We only talked about a few threats, a few different ways to implement this methodology of finding simple, elegant, built-in, and free ways to just level up your security posture. But there are so many other things that we can do. There's so many creative brains out here in front of us that can help the community find easier ways to deal with these common threats and share that knowledge. We talked about ClickFix, and it's evolved into FileFix. I don't know that I'm aware of a fix for that one yet, but get enough people thinking about it, thinking about the path in which that attack plays out, and looking for those breakpoints and those creative ways to stop it, we can do some pretty neat things with the systems we already have without buying new fancy tools, which we're a big fan of.
Shortcut abuse is another big one on that list. Always a problem. I haven't come up with anything to solve that yet, but if somebody did, I would really love to know what that is.
And then all the other LOLbins. I mean, there's a whole website of them out there, and all of them are very fun and cool, but they're a big pain in the neck for most of us, I imagine. Unless we have red teamers out here who are just, thinking of ways to get around what we've put together. But go out and think about this. Implement this methodology when you head back home and you're solving these security problems at your organization. And we have to say, without sysadmins, we are nothing. All this work that we did, all this research we put in, all the things that we tried, we weren't reading cybersecurity blogs. We were pouring through forums of sysadmins trying to solve weird problems and being like, oh, I tried this, it broke something. And we were like, but wait, that might break the thing we want it to break. So use those resources, whether it's online or the people you work with directly. Sysadmins are, we're standing on the backs of giants there.
I got some useful resources for you. Scan these QR codes, enter your social, mother's maiden name. I have the URLs under them if you want to just enter those in instead. But on the far left, we have just a simple gist on GitHub guidance for implementing the default app associations through group policy, along with a list of file extensions that are useful. On the right-hand side, same idea, GitHub gist, just talking about example firewall rules that you might want to consider, starting point for you. And in the middle, I wanted to share a blog post that fellow former threat hunter Tyler Bowman, who's now over at Huntress, wrote just recently, talking about all these different ClickFix lures, what they look like, how to detect them, etc. It's a great blog. I really recommend you take a look. Of course, all of our resources, because we need to share those, and our contact info. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If it's on LinkedIn, I probably won't respond, but there it is anyway, and we are both on Discord, so happy to answer anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can reach out, but if you see me and you have a question, that's the easiest way to get a hold of me here at the con. And then I'll try to look at LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is good for phishing, and that's about it.
That's about it.
So, and notably, Mike is still not a sloth.
Kellon, still not a bird.
So, we would love to open the floor for questions from virtual attendees or y'all out here. Would love to see if you have anything for us.
All right. Yeah, there's a virtual question. Can you point SAN to a copy action to send it to a network location? Going back a bit in the slides.
That's a good question.
Let's go back and look at that.
lights back a little bit. Here. I mean, technically, when you're doing the association, it can be to any binary with any pre-configured command line. So you could get creative there and point it in some way through a binary to a network location with information. Sure. Yeah, I have not tried that though. Yeah.
The hotkey modifications that you were talking about earlier, is that specifically for Windows hotkey combinations, or could you also modify like Control-C, Control-V?
Yeah, so the ones that we talked about were specifically the Windows hotkeys there. You can disable like Control-V, Control-C, all of those, if I remember correctly when we were looking at that, but we decided to not go that route because if you took away my Control-C and Control-V, I'm useless. Like 90% of my job is copy and paste. How am I supposed to get the hash from the EDR to the virus total?
And that would be through a different mechanism anyway. Those specific options are only for the Windows hotkeys.
Yeah. Theoretically, you could, yeah.
You can do anything in the registry.
Very true.
Any other questions? Online?
Anybody have creative ideas on how to break a new threat after, watching this and thinking, huh?
No?
No?
All right.
Okay.
Well,
That's
if you
fair.
come up with any other questions, feel free to find us.
Yeah.
Happy to chat. And thanks for attending our talk.
Yeah, thank you all.